Everyone, this is Darren Fink. I'm the program director and co-founder of Transfiguring Adoption. We're making this video and taking a look at today. This video is intended for our media reviewers. Those are our people that are reviewing books, movies, video games, whatever media that we've assigned to you. And this is going to help give you kind of a background on the concepts and our thought process at Transfiguring Adoption of what we're kind of the background of what we're looking at when we're looking at books and media, and how we feel that books and media should be helping parents and children connect and bond. So I am on, now this probably has changed because we're in process of actually thinking of revamping our website at the moment. So this is probably going to change, but this is our current website at the moment. And what I want you to see that you can do is go over to, we're going to try to look up trauma triggers. We actually have a blog that I would love for people, and I want to see that, yep, there we go. 10 questions for discovering trauma media triggers which harm foster and adoptive kids. We're going to click on that title, and it's going to open up the blog that we've written on that. And I want you guys to know that this is on the website, that you can go through and take a look at it and kind of read through this yourself and get kind of an idea of what is there. It's really one that I wrote kind of as an aha moment about, not that I think that I completely understand how trauma triggers work in our children, as I'm never going to suggest that I understand what it's like to come through a foster or adoptive situation, since I've never been through that myself, other than to be a foster and adoptive parent. I did have a situation where you can read in my media experience where, as a fan of a TV series from the 90s, I watched it again with my kiddos, having been through so many life experiences and different things, discovering that the show was too much for me because of the adrenaline rush and just the different things were going on. And I can only imagine that our children who have had difficult situations have the similar difficulties with adrenaline rushes and watching different trauma things unfold on TV or in movies or music or whatnot, or video games. So let's take a look at this. In this blog, we went through and we have 10 questions for discovering media triggers. When Transfiguring Adoption or any of our guest reviewers, and if you're volunteering with us, you yourself are going to be taking this mindset and be looking at these different things when you're reviewing media and looking for things that might trigger children or harm children emotionally or just even with their thoughts or whatnot. Down here, you are going to see that there is a click and print worksheet. I'm going to click on that and we're going to look at some of these different things. And I understand that you can look through these yourself, but I would love to give you just kind of my thoughts so that we can collaborate through email or on Facebook or different things like that and talk about these a little bit more, since you are going to be joining us with you're watching this video because you are a volunteer media reviewer, and so we all need to be on the same page and understand how we're reviewing media, what we're looking for, and what we're telling parents. So our 10 questions, so these are things that we're looking for in media, whether it be books, movies, or video games. What's going on in them, and to what degree is it going on, so that we need to tell parents about it, or let families know that maybe they need to be cautious about certain media. So number 1, are children and adults or animals being abused? Is there domestic violence, and how graphic or real is it? So let's take a look at that. So are children, adults, or animals being abused? Now, some people have wondered about animals. A lot of people have great empathy even towards animals, and that is one thing that even if children can see a dog being harmed at home, if they were abused physically in their home, there might have been animals that were abused in their home as well, or it just might simply remind them of the physical abuse that they endured, as they're usually movies such as that where dogs or horses or cats or whatever are being harmed. The movie has usually, if it's a movie, it's usually asked the viewer to form a connection with the animal, where you fall in love with the animal and you really like the animal because they're so cute and they're so darling. And so to see them get physically abused they might make that transition to remembering their own past with violence. Is there domestic violence in it? So are there parents that are yelling at each other, that are having fights and arguments? Is that going to remind our children about their past when possibly their birth parents were fighting and arguing? And then how real or graphic is it? You want to really pay attention to this. Obviously, the more real things are and the more graphic things are, the more of a chance that there is that our children are going to be triggered by all of these. And so number one, that is something. Is there some sort of abuse happening in the film or in the book or video game, the media? Okay. Number two, are drugs or alcohol being consumed? How graphic and real is it? Okay. And I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, even in the public realm, obviously parents are concerned if there are drug or alcohol use going on, and concerned if it's how real is it? Are they showing how to do things, how to take hits, how to different things like that. Obviously, the more real and graphic it is, the more concerned you're going to be. This is I'm thinking about too, like with even with teenagers or even maybe middle school kiddos. The more real and graphic it is, we're not just concerned about our kids being given suggestions on how to use these substances, but it's quite possible that our children coming from traumatic places might have been in homes where these were used by close family friends or maybe even birth parents. And this might bring up some past trauma, watching, especially if it's real and graphic, of them remembering how someone was using. And so we do really want to watch this and be aware of this before thinking about maybe families seeing images or video games or anything like that, or even just reading about it in books might be a little bit too real. Sexual content, nudity, sexual violence, consent, no consent. These are all things I think, again, is straightforward that we want to watch for if these are in any of the media that we're reviewing. Again, with different things that were going on and how love and sex and different things can be warped concepts coming from traumatic backgrounds. We want to watch and make sure that if this is happening in a piece of media, if the more real and graphic it is, the more it's going to be triggering for our children, or maybe it's something that our children are confused. The whole concepts of love and sex might be, people might have been using sex to get money or to keep power in the home or keep control. And so if those are warped views of things, maybe our children just don't need to see that at all. Or at the very least, are our children at a place where if they watch or see a video game with these things, do we need to have a conversation with them? And then consent. One thing that people don't think about too is consent or no consent. What happened in the piece of media as far as that goes, and are all of those things going to be contributing to trauma triggers? Number 4 is a character being rejected by adults or peers. This could be just simply that maybe a teacher in the movie blows a character off, ignores them. I'm thinking of, actually, one example I'm thinking of is in one of the Harry Potter movies. Harry Potter, who is a student in a magical school, one year during one of the movies, he tries to get the principal or the headmaster's attention constantly, and the headmaster is constantly rejecting him. Later on, you find out why throughout the course of the movie. No spoilers. But what does that do to our children who feel like they've been rejected and by peers and adults? And is that going to be trauma triggering? Is that something that we need to talk about with our children after reading a book about being rejected or how they feel about the rejection? That's just something that we might need to let families know they need to pay attention to, and they need to have a conversation, because it's not something that we normally think about if someone gets just rejected, because it might not even really be abuse, or it might not be what we in the general public consider abuse, but it just might be someone blowing someone off, not wanting to talk to someone, or not being available. But that might have a big reaction from our kids who have come from neglect and have very much had neglect and being ignored and rejected as a big part of the trauma piece of their story. Number 5, will the media cause your child to have an adrenaline rush? Let's talk about this for a little while. Obviously we are, because we're talking about all of them. So an adrenaline rush, let's see. So when you go into fight, flight, or freeze, you're going to get an adrenaline rush because you're fighting for your life. So this might be because you're being abused. It might be because you're really scared. There are a multitude of negative reasons of why you might have this adrenaline rush. And if you've experienced this over and over again during early parts of your life, or any part of your life really, your body's going to remember that sensation, that adrenaline rush. It's going to remember what you had to do to fight for your life. Now let's fast forward to a happier portion of your life, and it might be Christmas time, and you are really excited about Santa Claus bringing presents. And you all of a sudden experience an adrenaline rush because you're really excited about presents and getting to run and open presents under the Christmas tree in the morning. While you may realize that this is a happy thing and an exciting thing, your body's kind of might be subconsciously remember that adrenaline rush? This is what it felt like when I was being abused or when I had to fight for my life. And thus our children might have a difficult time with even a positive situation. They might have a rough time with watching a superhero movie where it's an intense fight scene, where there's nothing necessarily wrong in the scene, nothing's too graphic, it's might be just superhero violence, and it might be pretty mild, but if it's causing an adrenaline rush, it might make our children's bodies subconsciously remember a time when they literally had to fight for their life. So that's something even with video games that we might need to remember, even if it's like what we might consider a boring flight simulator game, but it's causing an adrenaline rush for our kids. It might be something that parents need to be aware about, because they might be seeing behaviors later on because children's bodies, even though nothing R-rated or anything else was happening in the video game, nothing mature, our children's bodies might be remembering a time when they had to fight for their life, and thus they might be having odd behaviors, like they might be more aggressive than usual, they might be more hyper than usual, because our children just don't know how to talk about, my body doesn't feel safe right now, and they don't know how to process that, and that's going to be up to us as reviewers to let parents know about that so that parents are ready for that and they can discuss that with their children. All right, number 6, are children or animals being neglected, and how graphic or real is that? I kind of spoke about that with the rejection part, and that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Again, if a big part of our children's trauma narrative was rejection and being neglected, even when animals are being neglected, they might associate themselves with the situation. It's going to be hard for our kids. Number 7, does a person or animal die? Does a parent die, and how real or graphic is that? I just recently had to review Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and some of the characters in the movie discussed how they had a close person in their lives pass away, and they just left it there. And the audience, when you're watching the movie, you experience how the loved ones die. And so I had to actually knock the review of this movie down a little bit, because they never worked through the death of the loved ones. They just said they died and that's it, and now we're moving on. For our children, they might have been put into care, or they might have been adopted, partly due to someone a birth parent or someone close to them dying, or they might have witnessed a traumatic death of an animal or whatnot. So it's up to us. That again is bringing up something. If nothing else, it's a character experiencing loss, and all of our children all of children in foster care and adoption have experienced loss, and that's going to be traumatic for them to watch other characters experiencing loss. Again, up to us as reviewers to let parents know that this is coming up in a piece of media, and that they need to maybe at least have a conversation with their child about it. And depending how real or graphic it is, we need to let them know so that they know whether they need to avoid the media or talk through it with their children, or if it's just, okay, everyone can watch it, but I need to be available at the end. Okay, and number 8. You guys are doing great, by the way. Hold on with me. We're at number 8. Is there an action being performed in the media that your child negatively associates with their past? Okay, and this one's going to be hard to explain because obviously we aren't sure what that might be because parents know their children best. But what I can say is with this as reviewers, if you see anything that's unique to the movie that just kind of you sit there in your head and you think, like, for example, a lot of children come from places where they might have been neglected or they might have been malnourished. So if you're witnessing something in a video game or in a book where children aren't being properly fed, you might want to just let parents know that that is unique to this piece of media and that they might need to be aware of it in case their children came from that sort of background. Okay. Number 9, are foster or adoptive parents portrayed in a bad light or unfit to care properly for a child? Okay, so we have a lot of movies and a lot of different media that for the plot and for entertainment usually have the caregivers in the bad light because that way they can get away with doing funny things to the foster parents because everyone wants to see them get theirs in the end. I reviewed a book a few years back that someone suggested to me that it was good for adoptive families, and it was about a little girl that lived in an orphanage, and basically the owner of the orphanage, she was a mean lady. It almost started off like Little Orphan Annie. She was a mean woman. The little girl wanted the sheriff in the Old West to adopt her. Like the whole setting was in the Old West. And the sheriff couldn't put 2 and 2 together. He was a bumbling idiot. And so the little girl ran away into the desert. And so the sheriff went after her. And there was a bad man out in the desert that kept trying to do the sheriff in. And he, being the bumbling idiot he was, couldn't figure out how to do anything. And the little girl would just appear out of nowhere and save him in the end every single time. Not necessarily portraying the orphanage owner in a horrible light, that she couldn't take care of the needs of the children in the orphanage, that she had to be mean and nasty to get her way, and overbearing and controlling in order to keep everyone safe. So she just wasn't portrayed in a very good light as what we would hope children in foster and adoptive care would see their caregivers as. And then the sheriff, being the bumbling idiot, he did eventually adopt all the kids in the orphanage at the end, but throughout the whole book, the little girl had to take care of the sheriff. And again, this wasn't portrayed in a very good light, as children that are coming in from foster care or have been adopted have usually been in situations where they had to take care of themselves and they couldn't trust the adults in their life to take care of them. So we don't want to see this in entertainment, that it's reinforcing that yes, you can't trust the adults because they really can't take care of you, and this movie or book proves it. We would like to see that caregivers are being portrayed in a good light so that we can help children understand that they can call on us for their needs and trust us as they're trying to walk through a difficult journey. So that's definitely something to watch out for, and we need to let families know about if that is in a movie or a book. And again, it might not be something the general public thinks about, but as foster parents and adoptive parents, it's something we should be aware about because we need to help our children learn to trust and form relationships to be successful adults. Number 10, and the last one, you guys are doing great. Thank you for hanging with me. Number 10 is a character being abandoned or purposefully left behind. And I can think of it seems like I just saw a movie about a dog being left behind and having to go find his owner. But is there a movie, like I'm thinking of the Home Alone series too, where a character was accidentally abandoned. Again, while that might not be horrific for the general public, and it was a comedy and it was hilarious, for a child that's actually had that done to them, it might be scary. It might bring up some emotions, and they might be remembering times of when they were abandoned or they were left behind. And so we have a duty as reviewers to let parents know that that exists in a piece of media and to what extent, so they can plan whether they are going to allow that piece of media into their home or not. Okay, so that's all 10 of them, you guys. This is fantastic. I hope this gives you kind of an idea of where we're coming from. And when you're looking through your piece of media and getting ready to review it, I hope this helps you to kind of give you a sense of what you need to be watching for. Our Hoot system, which is our grading system, which I talk about in another video of how to set up and create your templates and your blogs that you're writing for us. You're going to look through our 5-score Hoot system, and the more of these issues that you see in your piece of media, the lower, obviously, the lower you need to make the grade for the media. So I know in the Hoot system, I'm going to talk about in the other video that a 3 out of 5 Hoots is kind of the baseline and standard that we want to see all media. So if you think that that there's definite benefit to the media, then we need to give it at least a 3. Now, the 1 and the 2 Hoots, if we're seeing a lot of these issues that we're talking about on this sheet pop up and they're graphic, they're real, then we need to start marking things down as a 2 or a 1 so that parents can, at a quick glance, see that our grade reflects that there are a lot of these things in the media, and they need to think about either watching or viewing the media first before they let their children see it, or whether they just need to avoid it altogether. So thank you so much for being a volunteer reviewer for our website. If it's not been told to you, you're amazing, because like I keep saying throughout this whole video, this is going to give the tools and the resources to busy parents who are longing to help foster and adoptive children be successful adults. This is going to help put resources into their hands where they can be empowered to help children along this journey, help them to avoid trauma triggers, help them to avoid things that maybe children haven't worked through enough yet to be able to be exposed to some of this. So thank you so much for helping families and children be successful and to nurture and grow.